AI operations are entering a new phase, moving beyond dashboards and alerts towards autonomous, agent driven operational intelligence. But as enterprises deploy more AI agents across infrastructure, applications, and security operations, new challenges are emerging around data silos, orchestration, governance, and even operational trust. In this episode of Network Angle, I'm joined by Shailesh Manjrekar, Chief AI and Marketing Officer from Fabrix.ai, to discuss how organizations are evolving from traditional AI ops towards agent ops, and why unified operational intelligence will become critical in the next generation of AI-driven IT operations. Hi, everyone. I'm Bob LaLiberte, Principal Analyst at the Cube Research, and welcome to this Network Angle. Shailesh, great to have you back on the program.
Hey, likewise, Bob. It's great to be talking to you again after probably the last 5, 6 months. Yeah, I think February is when we spoke last. So it's great to be back.
Absolutely, yeah. You're a veteran of the Network Angle podcast. So, with all that said, let's get started and dig in. We've all witnessed the fact that enterprises are moving from AI experimentation into operationalizing that AI across their IT and network operations. I'm wondering, from your perspective, how do you see the industry evolving from the traditional AI ops towards agent ops?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a very pertinent question, right? And we call this the agentic value gap, right? So a lot of experimentation, very little business value, right? For a number of reasons. It could be your infrastructure debt, it could be your data debt, or it could be a governance debt, right? And to answer your question about the evolution, what we have seen, I mean, we have been an AI ops player when we began. So we know that space extremely well. And AI ops served us well, right? And it was primarily based on machine learning techniques, and it resulted into showcasing and war room, or what do you call an ticket or an incident, right? Or a dashboard. The problem with AI ops is what I call the last mile problem. That means, somebody has to get into a war room, and particularly subject matter experts across disciplines, right? IT ops, NOC ops, SecOps, and they are in the process of kind of identifying that it's not their fault, right? So that's the first mission in the war room. Second is you are kind of at the mercy of their subject matter expertise to interpret that dashboard and take some results, right? And that's where this new phenomena around agent ops has completely transformed, operational intelligence in our mind. So agent ops is really about agents, right, being taking action with those data points, right? So it's all the way looking at the data. It's all the way being able to get actionable intelligence out of the data, and then finally taking some action. So that's what we define as agent ops. It's a new discipline, and think of it, it's almost your onboarding, and digital workforce in addition to your human workforce, right? And obviously, just like a human workforce, you got to have all the observability, the explainability, the governance, the trust around this new digital workforce. And that's what the agent ops discipline is all about, right? And just to add to a little bit, right? So agent ops and agents were kind of proliferating all over the place, in both in the operational discipline, but also in the application world, where the traditional three-tier application and the native cloud native applications were all being transformed with agents. But really, in my mind, the dawn of OpenClaw and NemoClaw and DefenseClaw really became the kind of the chat GPT movement for agents, right? And I think now we are in the midst of all of this. So anyway, that's what I meant by agent ops and the evolution of AI ops to agent ops.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely been a noticeable shift, right? It probably started last year and it's really picking up momentum. And like you said, that OpenClaw really catapulted the agent conversation into the
Yeah.
forefront of everyone's conversation. And again, just like when you think you've got something figured out, a new technology comes out that makes it far more complicated, and you need more tools to be able to reel that in and deliver some type of operational benefit. And so I think that's what we're starting to see now, right? We're in this process of people understand AI, but now they're trying to understand what agent means, and having agents and having them talking to multiple different platforms and applications, and how you have to do that from an operational provide governance. So there's a lot of things for organizations to really keep in mind as they go through this transition.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this world is evolving so fast, right? I mean, it's been hard. Even people like us who kind of live and breathe this every day, it's been hard to keep up. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Cool. Now, I know we've talked a bunch of times, Shailesh, and one of the things you highlighted was this concept of a unified agent control plane. And we're starting to hear that more and more. In that context, what problem are you trying to solve for enterprises and service providers by giving them that unified agent control plane?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So see, agent ops and agentic is been used loosely, right? Just like AI ops used to be. So there are vendors who are using a variation of agentic ops or agentic in general, right? Even for things like where you're dealing with, rack pipelines, right? Where you're looking at documents, what we call the episodic memory, right? Things which have happened, and then based on that learnings, what action can you take, right? So that in our mind is kind of the first generation of agentic, right? What we deal with is actually real-time data, right? So this is, you're talking about alerts, incidents, time series data, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the first difference in what we do. Okay. The second difference is these agents are actually deep agents. That means, you have an hierarchy of this agent. It's not just one agent. It's a multi-agent kind of an platform where you have an orchestration agent, you have use case agent, and then you have domain specific agents, right? And what today the fundamental problem which we are trying to solve is obviously with agentic, all the existing vendors, right? Whether they are APM vendors, whether they are ITOM vendors, right? They are also trying to build agentic, stacks, right? Obviously, everybody sees the value. The problem is they have not solved the fundamental problem of how do you coalesce all the data, right? Because they are building this agentic stack on top of the data they have or on
Right.
top of the visibility they have. That means they have visibility at the application level, they have visibility at the networking level, right? They have visibility at the infrastructure layer, right? And so on and so forth. So they are not solved the fundamental problem of data silos and
Yep.
the swivelware problem, swivel chair problem, what I was talking about, alluding to earlier, right? So what customers are really asking for is this unified agentic control plane, which grows across all of these silos, right? That means this control plane can talk to APM agentic stack, it can talk to NPN stack, it can talk to ITOM stack, it can talk to ITSM stack, and then make these holistic decisions and take actions, right? So that's precisely what we mean by unified agentic control plane. And if you think about us as an AI ops company, right? Our claim to fame was what we used to call domain agnostic AI ops, right? That
Mhm.
means we were not tied to a certain domain. We
Right.
were a kind of an Uber tool, right? And that kind of philosophy has also kind of transformed into the agent ops world. So what we are trying to present is a unified agentic control plane, primarily for operational intelligence, but I'll also expand on that how now there is disruptions happening, which kind of allow you to look beyond just operational intelligence. But that's what I meant by it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. So you're not only heterogeneous, but you're also extensible beyond a single domain, which is going to be so important, right? Because there's never going to be one tool that does it all. So the key is being open to communicating with all the different tools that you have and being able to drive that unified, at least unified data or visualization of that data, right? Bringing that together so you can have the context across those environments.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a real life example. We just recently won a customer, right? A large Fortune 500 customer, a very evolved stack, a lot of tools. So they had, APM tools, they had Dynatrace, they had Splunk for infrastructure, they had CloudWatch, AWS CloudWatch, they had certain ITOM tools, they had Oracle Enterprise Manager. The major challenge with the infra team was they did not have visibility into the application domain, right? And the application team was not willing to, for whatever reason, to ingest data into the infra layer, right? Which was, in this case, was Splunk. It could be something else, right? And they were kind of, at this kind of gridlock, right? Essentially not gaining that unified visibility. And we came in as an unified agentic control plane, and we were able to federate across APM tools, across infrastructure tools, across the cloud tools, and give them that visibility what they need. Right now, root cause analysis and NetOps root cause analysis and remediation is happening across all of these domains. Right, so that's kind of a perfect example of what we mean by unified agentic control plane.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I want to pick up on something you mentioned there about the data federation. And we've talked about this concept of agentic data federation and becoming a real critical capability. I wonder if you could explain to the viewers some of the differences you see between, the shortcomings of ETL versus your ECL, or entity context linking approach, that you use.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of a fundamental building block for our platform, right? And it's an important concept. It's an important transformation happening, right? So in the AI ops world, what we used to have was we used to have all of this telemetry, and we used to extract, we used to transform that, and then load it into a data platform in a normalized way. Right. So now all of this telemetry is normalized, and then the machine learning models could take some action. Now, obviously, that had all these problems, what we talked about, right? The last mile and so on. When it comes to agentic, you got to, that model doesn't work, right? So first, you got to send all the telemetry to a central platform. Okay, and only then you are able to do certain actions, right? And in this world, with agentic world, with so many tools and so much data, that's not a kind of a feasible thing. The second problem is the agents actually need some structure. If you just start throwing telemetry at them, they're bound to hallucinate, right? So what we have come up with is what we're calling this agentic data federation, right? That means, we have had data federation before, but that data federation used to be static. It used to be rule based, right? That means if any underlying data sources change, any data schemas change, you got to go and do these things manually. Again, it's not very feasible, because in the agentic world, all of this changes extremely dynamically. So in our case, with agentic data federation, actually, we are not moving data. Our agents, what we call federation agents, go to the data sources. They do the data discovery. They create that schema. They bring in all the metadata and create an what we call an ontology layer. Right. So that's kind of, think of that as a schema layer. And that's where this concept of ETL to ECL comes in. Right. So we are essentially in the agent world, we are doing entity context and linking. Right.
Yeah.
And once you have that ontology layer, it is something the agents can read. They have now structure, right? And all of this is happening in place. That means the data is not moved. Now, of course, once the agent has, or the MCP server has determined that, hey, this is a problem and this is the logs I need to fetch, it will go and fetch only those certain logs from that particular data source. But it is not putting all the telemetry into the data platform. And that's kind of one of the kind of really transformational building block which is needed for this concept of what we are calling unified agentic control plane.
Got it. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because the idea, well, everyone wants to have a single source of truth and all the data in one place. It's just not feasible to get all the data into one location. But knowing where it is and being able to retrieve what you need when you need it is really what the approach is evolving to, and what organizations are moving to, and creating that fabric, if you will, excuse the pun on the name of your company, to be able to go and get that data, get that information, and bring it to where it's needed when it's needed. So yeah, it sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that evolves. And clearly, we've also seen in the industry, your approach is gaining some momentum. You've now got partnerships and integrations with the Cisco AI pods, IBM Fusion, AWS MSPs, and a bunch of other ecosystem players. I wonder if you could touch upon how important the ecosystem alignment is in scaling up these operational AI solutions.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right. So since the last time we spoke, right, so we've been recognized for our, thought leadership, our vision and execution, right? Not just in the analyst community, we got recognized. Obviously, you guys have been, we've been discussing this all along, but also by Gartner, by GigaOM, and so on. But from a partnership perspective, we are a certified ISV partner for Cisco Secure AI Factory, right, which is essentially Secure AI pod. Okay, and we run on top of OpenShift. We also leverage the NVIDIA names because we are also an NVIDIA inception partner, now kind of graduated into what NVIDIA calls Connect, right? But essentially, that's one kind of partnership. We are having a similar partnership with the IBM Fusion Converged Appliance, right? So that also coincidentally it runs on Red Hat OpenShift, right? It also has partnerships with NVIDIA, right? And so on. And we are also working with smaller IHVs, right? Independent hardware vendors, very specific like Rebellions and so on, right? Which have, AI accelerators. So that's one kind of partnership. The other partnership is we just got selected by the AWS MSP program,
Yeah.
right? And this program has about 275 MSPs, pretty much everybody, the large names you can think of, Deloitte, right? Entity Data, right? WWT, Presidio, and so on and so forth. And they have access to 10 tools, right? So we are one among those tools. We are the only tool under the agentic and agent ops category. And what AWS does is to build up this MSP program, they provide MDF funds for the MSPs. So whoever buys us as a platform tool and wants to kind of deploy services, they would get this significant kind of MDF funds from from AWS, right? So that's another swim lane for us, which we are extremely excited about, right? So we continue to obviously work very closely with Cisco and Splunk, right? As you know, that's been kind of our very long-term and strategic partnership, and with IBM, with NVIDIA, and AWS, and so on. Okay.
Got it. No, that sounds great. A lot of great progress there. So congratulations on that. Now, one of the things I always talk about is that time to comfort with AI. And we know organizations are starting to shift now. Some of my research is showing they want to do more autonomous operations, but there's still a lot of concern, especially depending what I find is people that are older like myself, maybe more concerned about the hallucinations, about automation just running away with itself, and obviously the governance risk. So how are you seeing enterprises balancing automation with operational control in the solutions that you have?
Yeah, so it's really a fundamental shift, right? So what we talk about is, you got to adopt this what we call, the agent operating model, right?
Yep.
Agent ops operating model. And what that means is you got to look at all of this, right? Because obviously the frontier models are making, kind of significant progress, but they are just one part of the puzzle, right? I mean, to us, they are like a means to an end. It's really the surrounding blocks of that frontier models which determine the enterprise readiness, right? And that's what we call this agent ops operating model, where you got to have the right trust, the governance, the observability, the explainability, right, and the reliability, and so on and so forth, which really kind of allows the agents to work within their kind of sandbox, right? So, for example, in our platform, everything flows with an AI persona, right? That means a level three engineer will have access to only certain data sets and certain MCP tools, which he is supposed to leverage, right? Which are very different from, say, his IT manager, who may have different set of tools and so on and so forth, right? So that's kind of an example of guardrail. The second example of guardrails is we have this concept of projects. Think of them as departmental sandboxes, right? And now once you have had these projects, you can add these AI personas to these projects, and then we do FinOps on top of that. That means, hey, this marketing department cannot go over and budget of $2,000 or certain token limits, right, for their usage, right? And if they do, then alert us on that. Or this particular persona has only this much limit for tokens and this much limit for budget, right? So those are some examples of guardrails. Another big kind of an building block in our platform is this evaluation module, right? So the evaluation module is looking at this agent continuously. It's looking at the agent decision making continuously at every step of the way, right? And it is, it's evaluating those agents, leveraging both what we call LLM as a judge, but also human feedback, right? And both those feedback loops are fed back into the agent, right? And they are evaluated for on 5 or 6 different categories, right? Whether how accuracy, the user friendliness, MCP tools, so on and so forth. And it's a continuous learning process. So if we find some anomalies in the processing, right? We detect that, we feed that back through and feedback mechanism to the agents, right? Which then are able to learn on top of on their everyday operational aspects, right? Uh, so
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
so those are some of the things which are absolutely important, right? And then also, as I talked about, so the main modes what we have is agentic data federation, right? Then what we call intelligent context engine, right? Which essentially provides that context purity across any runtimes, right? I mean, you could have a number of different runtimes, right? It could be Claw, it could be Defense Claw, it could be any other APM tool or ITOM tool or ITSM tool, and we are able to coalesce the context across all of these different runtimes to provide that LLM precisely what it is looking for. Okay,
yeah.
so that's a fundamental kind of a concept which kind of ensures that there is almost minimal or almost no hallucination.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I'm super glad to hear you talking about the, obviously tokenomics was a huge topic at NVIDIA's event this year, and
Yeah.
so giving people insight into that is going to be hugely helpful as organizations look forward to that, and then all the other capabilities that you're bringing to bear there as well. Uh, I wanted to switch gears a little bit. There's a lot of talk around Mythos and Daybreak and so forth. And you've talked about your platform being Mythos and Daybreak, excuse me, ready. Maybe you could explain to everyone what that means in practical terms.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very hot topic, right? And in fact, I just wrote a blog about that, right? And see, these are really, transformational frontier models, right? When it comes to zero-day vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah,
But what with the announcements across Mythos and Daybreak, what we are seeing is, there used to be different disciplines around, vulnerability exposure, right? Which used to be mostly SecOps, right? Then there used to be IT ops, which was mostly monitoring, correlation, right? Incidents and tickets and so on and so forth. And then there used to be threat intelligence, which was standard, SOC ops, right? You're detecting threats, you have SIMs and SOARs and so on. Now with Mythos, right? Obviously, they are Mythos and Daybreak both. They are extremely good at detecting the zero-day vulnerability, right? But what do you do with that zero-day vulnerability, right? You got to understand what is your exposure in your environment, right? You got to understand what's your blast radius, right? I mean, what is that? Has to be patched or kind of remediated, right? Then you got to understand if I were to patch this, right? What's going to be my priority?
yeah,
Right? I mean, hey, is this, I mean, if I upgrade this network switch, right, what are the applications which are going to get affected because of this, right? What are the users who are going to get, right? So that's what we call the dependency maps, right? Similarly, the business context, hey, I mean, how do I prioritize this? Should I prioritize my, my web front application first versus my monitoring applications, right? So all of this needs not just vulnerability detection and discovery, it needs this disciplines to actually work cohesively, right? And that is where I go back to my premise of this unified agentic control plane, right?
yeah,
Which is going to actually make it real, right? Where you can not only now just detect your zero-day vulnerabilities, but really take appropriate actions, right? Which allow you to, right? Because you have Mythos and Daybreak, right? They can kind of go, they can be kind of detecting like crazy, right? This zero-day vulnerabilities, right? And you have now this backlog of zero-day vulnerabilities, right? But don't have any way of actually operationalizing that, right? And that is an even bigger opportunity what we see with this unified agentic control plane, right? So if you look at the stack, what this unified agentic control plane does is it unifies the data layer, right, with the agentic data federation, right? Then it unifies these different tools, right, within say one domain, say IT ops domain, and then it actually unifies these different domains themselves, right? So it's a very powerful concept, right? And I think we are ready as a Fabrix agentic platform, right, to take on that challenge, right? So my appeal through my blog was, hey, because there's only few companies who have access to Mythos, but many of them are partners, right? So this would be a good opportunity for us to collaborate, right, for the better of community.
Absolutely. I think that's a great approach for doing that. I know we're running out of time, but I also know that Cisco Live's coming up soon and you're going to be there. So, give you a quick plug. What can people expect to see if they stop in, and what booth are you at?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. So Cisco Live Las Vegas or North America is by far a biggest show for us throughout the year among the shows we do. We actually have this time we had two booths, right? So one booth is focused on everything we are doing with Cisco from an networking perspective, from Splunk perspective, from CX perspective, and that's booth number 3323, and that's going to be in World of Solutions. We also, as a Cisco ISV partner for Cisco Secure AI Factory, have been invited for another booth in the Cisco AI Village. So this is a kind of a new solutions place Cisco has started kind of putting out. I think beginning of this year, the first time I saw it was in Amsterdam Cisco Live. So we have a booth there as well, where we will be primarily having all these unified agentic control plane conversations, right? So looking forward to meeting, partners, analysts, and customers, obviously, right, and having great discussions. So thanks for bringing that up, Bob.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Shailesh, thank you again so much for joining me here today.
Absolutely, Bob. It's a pleasure again, and thanks for giving the opportunity to update you folks on how things have been in the last 6 to 9 months. Thank you.
Ab- Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's clear the industry is moving quickly beyond traditional observability and AI ops towards more autonomous and agent-driven operational models. But as we discussed, the success will depend not only on AI innovation itself, but also on that governance, that interoperability, the data context, and having operational trust. So I want to thank everyone for watching this episode. And as you heard, for more information about Fabrix.ai, make sure you swing by Cisco's World of Solutions booth 3323 or in the AI Village booth 13.
Thank you, Bob. Just one last thing I wanted to highlight, give and kind of early exposure. So we have just launched a capability we're calling Collab Ops. So you can actually invite an agent into an unified communications meeting, whether it is Microsoft Teams, whether it is WebEx, whether it is Zoom, right? And now you can talk to our agent through voice interface. You can say, hey, Fabrix, here is an incident ID. Can you provide me root cause analysis for this? Right? And the way the agent will go in the background, it will work with this unified agentic control plane and get you the answer right in that meeting. So look forward to that demo in our AI village and looking forward to meeting you all.
All right, that sounds great. I think I'm going to swing by and take a look at that myself. All
Thank
right.
you.
Hey, I'm Bob LaLiberte with the Cube Research. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and follow for more insights on AI infrastructure, networking, observability, and enterprise operations. We'll see you next time.